I'm Erika, and if you like, you can contact me through my website, tweet with me on Twitter, or connect with me on LinkedIn. A little bit about me. I'm a roller skater, a boy mom, a twin girl mom, and fun fact, I'm a reformed developer. I started my career as a developer. I was working for this small startup advertising agency as a classic ASP developer. It was all the rage before .NET. And before you go there, I am not old, I'm just seasoned well. Anywho, as the company grew, so did I. I got hip to .NET as it rolled on the scene. Heck, I even became a Microsoft certified professional with the Solutions Architecture certification. It's a mouthful, I know. But my point is just to say that I was fully bought into the development scene, and QA wasn't even on my radar. In fact, it wasn't on anyone's radar. It was a problem that started to surface in some pretty nasty ways. Here's what happened. Our client had a big one-day event. They had spent a significant amount of money on print, online, and TV ads. These ads all directed to this one landing page that our agency had developed for them. This one landing page had one job. It was supposed to tell the consumers about that one product and then use the one very large link on the page to redirect the consumers to the purchase page specifically set up for them to purchase that product, right? Well, yeah, as lack of quality would have it, that one link on that one page for that big one-day event, you guessed it, did not link to that purchase page. Do me a favor and chime in on the chat and tell me where you think the link went. Be creative. No, really, tell me. Think big. Anybody? Okay. You're not going to believe me. Let me tell you. Actually, I'll show you. Yeah, it was a cat playing a piano. The keyboard cat, exactly. It was pretty bad. Now, of course, all of us here can map at least 10 different ways the process broke down for that to happen. But what it boils down to, there was no formal testing process. And as you can imagine, the company lost a portion of the business, heads rolled, and leadership demanded a response from the teams. How are we going to fix this? Now, I'd like to say that they came to yours truly and said, Erika, you are the best person to fix this. But y'all know that's not the story. However, I had been leading several development squads for about 6 months, and my conversations more and more started to turn towards quality. Specifically, how could we improve it? Those conversations reached the ears of leadership, which in turn led to another conversation where they asked me to start the company's first quality department. And of course, my response was absolutely not. You're not going to blame me. I'm not going to be the scapegoat for the cat. No way. Now, I'm embarrassed to share a sad side note that even here as a developer, I instinctively felt that QA is where the blame falls. I felt that the organization wanted someone to shoulder the entire burden of quality, which was even more crazy because as a dev leader, I had an understanding of how the issues were actually creeping in, and a test team would absolutely help to improve that. So after a few conversations, some bribes, some dinner, maybe some drinks. Okay, definitely some of those drinks. I said yes. That yes may or may have been directly related to those drinks, but that's neither here nor there. And yes, I did say may or may, but whatever. I jumped in. I poured over content, books, articles from industry leaders. I attended conferences and engaged industry leaders. I was all in. I loved the process, strategy, and organization that was needed to pull a QA team together out of the rubble of a development lifecycle that had never considered, let alone valued, its participation. This foundation, along with a career of experiences, has shaped my view of the role we as human testers can and should play in our organizations. I believe we need to resurrect, reclaim, and redefine manual testing. In doing so, we reconnect with our core mission, hone our craft, and showcase our value beyond testing the delivered application. But I'm getting ahead of myself. We'll come back to the 3 R's in just a bit. So I'm here in QA. I didn't know a thing about building and leading QA teams, and I definitely felt the weight of those disadvantages. But I had some advantages too. I leaned in on my 6 years of experience at the company. I knew the domain and clients. I had developed relationships and had a good rapport with leaders and others in the organization. Leaning in on these advantages have shaped my experiences and my view of how and when QA should engage, which, to be clear, is always. Here, the conversation didn't start with testing. I had to help the client services team figure out how they communicated with, engaged, and build testing services. I started by socializing and promoting the value of testing. I had to bring quality to the forefront of the conversation and champion it as a first-class citizen in the existing delivery lifecycle. And I wasn't limited by preconceived expectations around where and when I should engage. I had questions and I needed to engage for answers from leaders, stakeholders, individual contributors, and consumers, honestly. In my mind, there was no area that was off limits for QA to engage. In fact, I thought we were supposed to be involved in everything. Things like process and documentation could absolutely benefit from an interaction with testing, right? I was involved so much that looking back now, I can imagine people saying things like, dang, Erika is nosy. But listen, during this time of socializing the value of testing and, well, okay, being nosy, I learned that communication, collaboration, and engagement were a key part of building new quality processes and developing a strong test strategy. By engaging at all levels, I was able to fully understand the impact of poor quality on the whole organization. The information provided insights to develop the test process, strategy, and tools that would help us improve our quality. So in this case, testing was the easy part, It was the buy-in, the collaboration, the inclusion that we had to work on first. Even though I was building a QA team, I had to involve myself in these other areas of the business. I had to identify, clear, and set my own place at the table. That meant I was interviewing stakeholders, documenting existing process, and gathering customer feedback, assessing the value of artifacts like wireframes and mockups. These inputs were vital to identifying how to solve the quality concerns in a way that benefited the organization, our clients, and our clients' customers as well. In socializing the value of QA, I showcased how infusing quality earlier with things like engaging to improve those processes, highlighting what artifacts were valuable to the test process, and providing feedback in design discussions, how they were all part of the quality experience. And it was on us to keep QA in the conversation. I moved from value socialization to inclusion monitor. I was often heard saying things like, thanks for the heads up. Don't forget to include QA in your updates. Or, ooh, did you forget to include QA in your kickoff meeting? Or make sure QA is on that bill to the client. We don't want another piano cat incident. Yeah, I played that one up for a bit. The great thing about this new department was that people were eager to improve quality and they didn't have any preconceived views of what testing should or shouldn't look like. They wanted help. They were open to help. It was easy to get into those discussions, to get into a rhythm of expecting engagement from QA. I remember even being included on a reorg concept discussion because they wanted to validate the idea and thought that engagement from the test team during the concept phase would be valuable. Socialized value? Check. It was around that time in my career that I developed my first business mantra. With each organization I've joined, I've learned lessons that have turned into mantras that I carry with me. Some of my team members will even tell you that I repeat them ad nauseum at times, but whatever. The mantra I developed here: engage and socialize QA's value. For me, this mantra cements the idea that it should be easy and expected that QA is engaged at all and involved at all levels. But it's not always that easy, is it? At times, we've been up against negative perceptions of QA, skepticism, lack of advocacy, and sometimes even annoyance at our role as manual testers. Chime in on the chat if you've heard this before. Manual testers aren't technical enough. Manual testers aren't fast enough. Manual testers don't understand enough. Manual testers aren't enough. I know I have. In fact, I heard it the very first week I joined a large organization as director of QA. I sat down to interview one of the executive leaders about quality at the organization, and I quickly found out that he had a very unfavorable view of the QA team. In fact, he proceeded to count the ways that the test team was failing. Here are a few. He said, "We have too many manual testers." Then he said, "We don't have enough test automation." Then he said, "We're moving too slowly." And finally, "We're not catching the right issues." Spoiler alert, this is common feedback. I've heard it when I join new organizations that are looking to build, grow, or transform the QA team. I hear it when I consult with QA leaders who are trying to build a new team, when I consult with founders and CTOs who are trying to figure out how to solve their quality concerns when they believe the problem starts and stops in the QA review column. Now, don't get me wrong, these are all very real and important problems to solve. And I'm sure a number of you hear these problems and think test automation can fix all of that. You know what I hear? QA isn't valued. QA isn't included. QA isn't accountable. QA isn't engaged. Case in point, I recently consulted a manual tester who was very passionate about his role as a tester and was trying desperately to figure out how to get leadership to value the voice of quality within his organization. He was raising concerns about the impact their current processes were having on the test experience and was essentially pushed to the side, told to stay in his lane and test. Tactfully stated, of course. They didn't have time to focus on the test function. They didn't want to make time to focus on the test function. In this case, we can see QA trying to be accountable, trying to engage, trying to redefine their value and position in the delivery lifecycle. But the response from leadership indicated that QA wasn't valued. Essentially, this tester didn't have anyone in leadership advocating for him, advocating for quality. That lack of advocacy comes with some major hits to the quality team and ultimately their perceived value in the organization. Manual testers begin to feel disempowered. They shrink their voice and they begin to disengage. The result, a test team that only shows up when there's a ticket in the QA review column. That vicious cycle continues as engineering leaders' perceived value of manual testing diminishes further because they don't see engagement from the quality team. Remember, manual testers aren't enough. This perceived value leads to low expectations, driving the marginalization of the manual testing function to just one column of the SDLC, which turns into leadership believing they can replace testers with the machine, leaving manual testers feeling even more disempowered, resulting in even less engagement and communication, and then it starts all over again. What's even worse, that cycle is then carried forward with new testers. In Practitest's recent quality report, they stated that 65% of us learn testing on the job. Chances are they're learning from other testers who also learned on the job. What did those testers learn? Vicious cycle. This means we see teams of testers that don't know their value. They are being told what is expected of them by leadership, which, as we talked about, is a boxed-in view that does not take advantage of the true value that manual testers bring to the table. What it all boils down to is what leaders believe manual testing is actually a distancing of the tester from the process, from their craft, from their mission. Now, I want to give a shout out to our leaders. As innovators in the space, we need to champion the value of manual testing, not only outside of the test team, but internally as well. I know there are talks about new roles in our testing universe, like quality coaches and advocates, and I believe that those can be valuable. Now, don't come for me all at once, preferably not at all, but I think some of these trends come from the pendulum swinging too far away from leveraging the value of manual testing. With a high focus on test automation as an exclusive test strategy, we're enabling that boxed-in expectation perpetuated by a vicious cycle of undervaluing and ultimately disempowering our manual testers. That value is being shifted into new job titles when these roles are roles that our manual testers can and should do. In fact, many manual testers are already doing these things, but we have to partner with our toolbox to create the space for them to do it consistently, at scale, and with excellence. As QA leaders, we have to own that shift and make sure that we understand and communicate the value of our manual testers alongside these new roles and advocate for quality together. because we know the truth. You can't have truly impactful testing without the human. Again, you cannot have truly impactful testing without the human. And it's on us as both leaders and individual contributors to champion that truth. Manual testers bring the heart of the business to technical conversations. Manual testers bring your customer's voice inside the walls of the organization. Manual testers bring quality to the forefront of the conversation and help drive not only automation delivery, but the overall quality of what is being automated. Developers speak the language of the machine, but manual testers speak the language of your customer. They are the bridge. So again, you cannot have truly impactful testing without the human. Test automation is designed by humans, but we only uncover issues we've told it to watch for, and it's only intended to work against a delivered component. In a recent study, System Sciences Institute at IBM reported that it costs 6 times more to fix a bug during implementation phase versus design phase. Furthermore, according to IBM, the cost to fix bugs found during the testing phase could be 15 times more than the cost to fix them during the design phase. 15 times more. And we've got to get out of this box because it is costing your company money. And listen, if you get a bonus, it's costing you money too. It's time to let the humans work. So how do we do that? How do we put ourselves back in the conversation? How do we bring our seat back to the table? That table where developers and others are at, most of them, very eager to get the support that we can provide. Remember, I mentioned earlier in my career that I had that very misguided view of QA as the scapegoat, the team where the blame fell. Sadly, we still see this happen in less mature organizations. That also means there is opportunity here to socialize the value of manual testing specifically, to share how test automation is not a silver bullet, but instead part of our toolbox. We need to come together at that table to redefine it, and not just as manual testers, but together as a team with product owners, developers, designers, customer support, automation engineers, SDETs, everyone. We need to resurrect, reclaim, and redefine manual testing because it is not dead, but it does have to start with you. You've got to shake off those preconceived and negative views. No, really, you, right now, shake it off. Shake it all off. Just let it go. Reset with your own expectations of what manual testing can and should be. Know your worth. Own your strengths and acknowledge your value. Then bring all the goodness to the table. Once you acknowledge your value and own your strengths, then we get to put in the work on the 3 R's to resurrect, reclaim, and redefine manual testing because, yes, it's not dead. In resurrecting, we get back to the basics like requirement testing and actually testing, not only reading and then writing acceptance criteria or test cases, but look for those inconsistencies or inaccuracies across the stories being developed. Evaluate the impact of the new functionality on the existing application by thinking through the workflow of the implementation. What questions do you have? Does it all make sense? Did you find that in your mental mapping of the flow, it got garbled in some way? Share that feedback. Talk to the team. Your feedback may very well have uncovered a user experience issue that you are now saving the customer from. Not only that, you saved your customer support team. They don't have to field that call anymore. You saved your marketing team. They don't have to over-engineer documentation to explain a garbled user flow. You've saved your development team. You know they love that. The implementation requirements will likely be even more clearly defined and straightforward. Owning this part of the conversation as a manual tester brings value and saves money. Remember, it costs 15 times more to fix these type of issues in the test phase versus the design phase. One of my favorite tools to help in this area are workflow diagrams because they'll show the flow of the application while peppering in architecture by showing when services are called or databases are used and more. And I found this to be a very insightful tool, not only for developing test strategy, but also being able to understand the impact of a new feature on the system before a line of code is even written. I use it specifically to support those mental mapping exercises I was just talking about. Those exercises become so much easier when you have a visual diagram on the journey with you. In fact, I've seen developers value and even covet this as a tool. Like when I was working at a fintech startup and I noticed that we struggled with lack of documentation, and instead important knowledge was kept in people's heads. Well, we've all seen this before, right? Excuse me. As we scaled, this naturally began to have negative impacts on testing, but also the development process, because they weren't always privy to the larger impacts of the changes, because the business rules, especially the legacy ones, were buried in one or two people's brains. To help, I began mapping out the application. Then my team took on the effort to maintain their assigned feature areas. We broke it out by features and included any and all connections. It became a powerful tool used by QA and developers. Even our production team got in on the fun by using it to research and design new features. In fact, QA began to run onboarding for the development team. We would walk them through high-level system views and then deep dive into each feature using these workflow diagrams. It's those foundational test practices like this that we need to resurrect. The ones that have been pushed to the wayside as we've become more and more agile, they can still fit into our efficient and speedy agile test strategy. Things like condition testing, static analysis, like data flow testing, persona testing, workflow testing, use case testing, just to name a few. In resurrecting those types of test practices and more, you're increasing your knowledge. Sorry, my screen blanked. You're increasing your knowledge. You're gaining exposure by diving deeper into your craft and also showcasing your strengths. All of this ultimately empowers you with more to bring to the table and the conversation. And that's when we pounce and we reclaim our seat at the table, our voice in the conversation. Be nosy. Yes. Ask questions, even the ones you think are silly. All the questions. Don't be afraid to crash the party. Get in there, because you bring your own treats to the party. And I'm not talking about cupcakes. I'm talking about your value, your worth and strengths, that knowledge you gained as you honed your craft, domain knowledge you've developed through exposure, customer perspective, heart. Invite yourself to the conversation and show up to the meeting, literally and figuratively. Hear me. I've seen so many times where manual testers especially are in the space, but not in the conversation. They've checked out, disengaged, likely because they feel disempowered. But to reclaim, we need to first commit to fully showing up. One of my favorite books is Leading Quality by Cummings, John, and Peer. They talk about the impact of poor quality on the 3 C's, customers, company, and career, stating that poor quality was estimated to have cost companies over $1.7 trillion in 2017. How can we not reclaim our seat at the table and our voice in the conversation when there is so much at stake? Again, that means showing up, stepping outside of the low expectation and shining a light on your true value. Engage in the conversations, provide feedback, share insights, test all the things. Now, I know 2020 has been a lot and had some major impacts on how we work. And I will not be one to argue that remote work has its fair share of challenges. Because of that, this idea of reclaiming can understandably feel pretty hard right now. But the good news, the full reliance on digital meeting spaces has actually made the table a whole lot larger. Let's take advantage of this unique opportunity to create a shift in our space, to change the narrative and raise the expectation. This pandemic has been a complete disruptor in our industry. Let's make the most of it. Teams are building new processes to keep engaged. Get QA in there. Take advantage of the conversation, being open to intentionally embed the engagement of quality sooner and reclaim our voice in the conversations. In Agile offices, we had open spaces, which created the opportunity to hear different conversations and jump in. You don't have that anymore. Leaders are concerned about that breakdown in communications. This is a perfect opportunity for test teams, manual testers, humans to shine, to really own the collaboration and engagement for the purpose of improving quality, ensuring that teams are all on the same page with documentation like workflow diagrams, again, my favorite, personas, implementation plans. At Calendly, our team has really stepped up their game when it comes to documenting, and as a result, more information is shared with us. The teams want to make sure that we understand what's under development because they know that we'll document it. It's a win-win. Lean into this disruption as an opportunity to reclaim. We got to walk into these conversations like, we're bringing testing back. Yep. This is legit my testing theme song for 2020, and now it's stuck in your head too. You're welcome. As manual testers, this is your chance to really shine and show them all the amazing skills that we have that some organizations think they can automate out. But you have to do the work. You have to show up and show off your skills. Communication, collaboration, engagement, facilitation, questionization. Okay, I know that's not a word, but questioning, that's one of our superpowers. Question all the things. It goes hand in hand with test all the things. Showing up and showing off will reclaim our seat at the table because you can't deny excellence. Now, I'm sure some of you are saying there's absolutely no time for any of this. No time to resurrect or reclaim. But that's where we want to begin to redefine manual testing. We want to redefine how manual testers interact with their test toolbox to give them more space, time, and freedom to operate as a quality advocate or coach. The big one, leveraging test automation as a tool and not a standalone test strategy. Manual testing and test automation are not mutually exclusive. It's supposed to be a partnership between the two where manual testers feed into test automation to improve its value by driving things like the quality and priority of tests written. In turn, test automation then opens up opportunities for manual testers to provide even more user-centric value throughout the whole delivery process. Our role as testers can help to uncover and even challenge assumptions. We then take feedback from that discovery and turn it into high-value test automation that frees us up to do more discovery. Manual testing is about humans engaging the application. TapQA recently coined a new phrase that I absolutely love, humanual testing. It puts the value on us as humans in the testing process because it's we as humans, not machines, that ultimately are using the application. Doesn't it make sense that we as humans are therefore the ones assessing it? Now, again, please don't misunderstand me. Test automation is a powerful tool, but it is still a tool in our toolbox. Again, it is not a complete test strategy, nor strong strategy without humans partnering alongside it to bring the heart to the test experience. You can't, and dare I clutch my Southern pearls and say, shouldn't automate everything. But if you choose to, you still need to partner in with manual testers to develop automation that is valuable and fully leveraged. When I joined Calendly, they had it all together. Continuous delivery, integration, automated test environments, oh my. But I asked what their test automation was covering, and they pointed me to their pipeline dashboard, proudly showcasing everything in green. Okay, but what is it? Well, it's all of our tests, the test running, the developer said. Cool. What's it testing? Well, you have to go look at the tests in the code. Okay, any reports? Sure, you can see it has all run successfully on the dashboard. The developer was getting a little annoyed with me at this point. I politely persisted. How do you know the value of each test? How do you prioritize? How do you adjust based on risk? How do you, well, as he interjected, yeah, there it is. The chink in the armor, it's always there. Every organization has it in some form or another. Disclaimer, Calendly is freaking awesome. If you didn't know, get your account. But this was an area that we needed to shore up. Without a plan to build automation, it runs the risk of eventually losing value. Let me say that again. Without a plan to build automation, it runs the risk of eventually losing value. You wind up not leveraging it to do things like reduce your test cycles, remove risk, more high value engagement from the test team, or opening up more opportunities for user-centric testing. Instead, you create confidence through over-testing, which ultimately leads to a bloated test automation suite that you need to then figure out how to reduce because it's taking too long to run or is too cumbersome to maintain. I'm sure there are many of you that have experienced this exact problem, either as an individual contributor or a leader needing to solve it. One of the things we are doing at Calendly is auditing and mapping our test automation to our test cases. That test automation is now accessible to our test team as part of their test strategy build-out. This enables them to see the type, priority, and value of the automation that is available as they create new test cases and define their test strategy by feature or phase. As a result, the test team started to truly leverage our extensive test automation suite as part of their test strategy, which in turn is reducing our regression cycle times from weeks to days and soon hours. This reduction in time does not remove the need for manual testers, but instead creates opportunities for the team to explore the application from a customer's perspective. We're gaining more time and space to bring the customer's voice to the design, implementation, development, and delivery phase as a whole. This frees up time to advocate for quality on behalf of the customer. We get to engage and collaborate more, like during design phases where a bug fix is fixed with a few simple keystrokes. We're having more discussions outside of the engineering department to support other areas of the business like sales and marketing. We're creating documentation like the workflow diagrams, I'm just gonna keep saying that, that further bolsters not only our test strategy, but our automation strategy as well. We're partnering in more closely with customer support to improve issue response times that require QA or squad escalations. Ultimately, we're showcasing our value as a powerhouse of knowledge, expertise, exposure, and customer advocacy. We're not just stuck in the QA review column testing through an endless cycle of QA tickets. We provide more value. The opportunities for manual testers to infuse quality in the process are endless. We just have to be willing to show up and show them what we're made of. At Calendly, as we resurrect, reclaim, and redefine manual testing, we define, drive, and own defect SLAs, or service level agreements. The benefit here is that engagement is engagement. It puts us in the middle of the conversation about how we prioritize defect fixes, and we get to advocate for the customer more. We're providing feedback on process. We're showcasing the impact process has on testing and quality. We're documenting risks and questions during the discovery phase, providing feedback earlier and enabling the team to evaluate and solve potential issues before they write code. And we're leading the charge on documentation. By increasing our knowledge, we position ourselves to be naturally included in conversations so that others can leverage the knowledge that we have. Now, some of you are listening to me saying, this is all big team implementation. It's just me and another tester here. They don't listen to us. They just want us to check the box. We don't have advocacy, but you can do this. You can do this. You can resurrect, reclaim, and even redefine manual testing. So much of it is just making a choice to operate at that level of excellence. Show up to the conversations, engage and collaborate, showcase your powerhouse of knowledge. Relentlessly advocate for the customer. When you exhibit that level of excellence, it changes the narrative, increases the expectation, and you shift from a vicious cycle to a beautiful cycle. That higher expectation bolsters and empowers manual testers, driving more engagement from the test team, thus empowering the testers to exhibit an even higher level of excellence. In fact, I saw this beautiful cycle manifest at Calendly. When I joined initially, the team was oversourced across the squads, making it difficult for them to engage beyond just clearing the test column. And while a significant amount of test automation was in place, it wasn't leveraged to its full potential to provide the test team with more time to focus on other areas of testing. Shoot, our efforts weren't even included in the story estimation process. But it wasn't for lack of wanting. The team just didn't realize what they were missing out on. As a leader, I focused on that advocacy and socialization to start. We needed the team to know and see our value beyond that single step in the process. One of the more strategic changes was making adjustments in our org and team assignments so that the people were better aligned according to their strengths. So while we created space for them to engage more, they are also more passionate about what they are engaging in. Now the team is expected to show up, and it's because they increase their level of excellence. They win internal awards, get major shout outs from the engineering team on a regular basis. People go to them for information on the product because they've shown that they have the information. But they had to step into the conversation. They had to own the narrative and they had to show up. In their striving for excellence, they were dismissing unintentional low expectations and began showcasing the absolute badasses that they are. Sometimes you just got to tell people how awesome you are. Don't sit around waiting for them to ask you. Bye. For example, I like to talk to other executive leaders and founders about their views on quality. It's very insightful. Try it. And recently, I was speaking with the CTO of a small startup. After brief introductions, he started to apologize, saying he wasn't sure if our conversation would be much value for me. We don't have a QA team. Our developers do it. Human brains are expensive and manual testing really isn't efficient. Now, we all know in the back of my mind, I'm like, yeah, I heard that before. But as he continued, I found the chink in the armor. He said, they are great at testing the small things, the individual components that they build, but they're not good at testing across the application. Integration of two small pieces, things fall through the cracks. I want to automate all the things, but there seem to be roadblocks. My response, really? That's surprising. Our conversation shifted and I started to challenge him on the value of quality. By the end of our conversation, he said, you really challenged my views and assumptions on quality in QA. I realized I'm actually doing the quality function. Thank you. He thanked me for challenging him because I socialized the value of testing. I talked about all the ways testers can help. I didn't accept his expectation. Instead, I questioned it. Again, my favorite book, Cummings, John, and Pierre wrote in Leading Quality. You will always need specialized testers who can use human imagination, knowledge, and experience to do investigative forms of testing. That's why manual testing is still such a powerful test strategy. Use it alongside test automation. Let it empower you to explore all the nooks and crannies. Leverage tools to create space to do more of it. Spend time getting inside the customer's mind. Do things the wrong way. Let it help you test all the things. But we have to champion it, socialize its value, change our mindset, and break out of the narrow-minded expectations driven by a low perceived value. Let's shine a light on the value of humans testing and testing all the things. We need to understand the foundations of our discipline to empower us to engage outside of the QA review column. Well, it's about that time for me to say toodles, but before I go, which of the 3 R's do you need to spend the most time on? What would it look like if you resurrected, reclaimed, and redefined manual testing in your organization? What guiding mantras do you have that can help you with the 3 R's? Now, if you left this talk with more questions than answers, good. That's one of our superpowers. We question things. That's where change starts. Let's work together to resurrect, reclaim, and redefine manual testing because it's not dead, just the definition. Thank you for having me today. I think we're going to go into Q&A. Sure, let's jump in.
So yeah, we can. We have a couple of questions. You can either take it, you can take one of it right now and maybe answer the others on the chat later. Yeah.
Okay, sure. Looks like the top one is what makes a manual tester? If he, she is not a manual tester, what other testers could the person be? Wow. You know, what makes a person a manual tester? This is, I think this is what's up for discussion in our community, honestly. I think this is what is, people are trying to figure out is, as I talked about, we're bringing in this idea of quality advocates and quality coaches because there's this element of what manual testers or somebody who sits in a manual testing type role typically brings to the conversation, a really strong one. So this person is somebody who is engaged with the product, who is hyper product focused and user centric. And they're interested in what's happening in the actual product, in the hands-on product and delivery of it, and Are the requirements buttoned up? Does it outline everything? Does it outline error messages? Is it going to be a good failure experience? If we're saying that it's okay for something to fail, is it going to be a high quality failure experience? And so as we've shifted to this heavy test automation role, this type of questioning that typically has come from a manual tester that's engaged, that type of questioning has fallen away. And I believe that that is the reason why we've had roles like quality coaches and quality advocates, because they're trying to infuse that idea into the conversation for developers and product managers and SDETs and others that are in the organization when they don't have that manual testing role. So what makes a manual tester, in my opinion, is somebody who's super quality, user-centric focused, which is also why I believe that TAP QA's retitling of the concept humanual tester is so appropriate, because it is that question, right? What really makes a manual tester? It's not just the person who's testing. We're looking for more from that person. And so calling them a humanual tester really solidifies the fact that we need a human who is engaged in the conversation at all levels through the delivery cycle, talking about quality and how do we improve it.
Great, amazing. We have one more question that's gaining popularity a lot lately.
Okay.
It's a big one. Yeah.
Companies are building quality processes partner. It seems like they're together, kind of.
It's broken down into two. Yeah.
You want me to answer the second one?
No, both are the same question.
Yeah.
Broken down. Yeah.
Okay, so many organizations like Google, LinkedIn, Salesforce are removing QA departments altogether and moving towards having developers test their features and code and moving towards TDD. Wonder how these companies are building quality products without QA quality departments. I have spoken to several leaders like at Microsoft that have done this, and they really led the charge there. And it's not that they don't have a quality. Well, I guess they don't have quality department. They're leaning on full stack developers to do it, and they're leaning heavily on test automation. But I promise you, the same conversation that I had with that CTO, where he was like, "My developers do it, but there are these gaps and there are these problems. And wait, I'm filling in. Somebody is filling in those gaps. Somebody, if it's not baked into the process for them, i.e. things like around documentation and explicit checkpoints or gates that are saying, yes, I vetted this new feature and I reviewed this workflow as it relates to this feature and how this feature impacts this workflow. And I've assessed that it's going to break this area and I've accounted for it with these stories." Unless they are having that conversation, it's very hard to, or unless that is built into their process, it's very hard not to miss those things. It's very easy to miss those type of issues. And you wind up having to fast follow. And so the value that they get in these is that they are able to move faster. They are. And so they're usually releasing smaller components. When you say, how are these companies doing it? They're releasing smaller components. They're seeing it fail, but they're able to release another small component to resolve it. But the response time, while the response time is not as high, the cost still is high because it goes to production. And depending on who finds it or how long it takes for them to find it, it has to go back through a complete cycle before it's released. They've streamlined the process to get there, but there's still cost in there, right? There's still impact to the customer. And there's value, I think, on both sides of these. And I believe that there's a blended experience and a compromise we need to find in the middle of these two ideas, where you have a full-on siloed, especially quality department, or no quality department, and all testing is handled by the developers who are also delivering it.
Great. Thanks, Erika.
Sure.
Thanks for